welcome back to the channel. Yep, it's still in lockdown here, which is pretty much Groundhog Day for us, except we had an earthquake. We had a 5.9 here in Melbourne, which is the first time in recorded history we've had an earthquake like that. So we're pretty much having a bit of fun with that. I was over in the man cave when it happened, and it rocked the whole room backwards and forwards, and I wasn't scared or anything like that. It was kind of like, hey, this is off the bucket list. This is a new experience. And so, yeah, it was our local supermarket lost some stuff off shelves. There had been a little bit of minor damage around the city, but nothing much big. So, yeah, interesting times we live in, isn't it? So, anyway, this time around I'm going to be talking about a science fiction movie based on a poem. Now, that doesn't happen very often. I mean, there have been movies that have been based on poems before. There was The Wild Party, which had Raquel Welch in it, which was based on a really good poem. There was also various versions of Eskimo Nell, which were based on a very filthy poem. But this one was based on a Swedish poem by a guy called Harry Martinson, which was written in 1956. It's a 2018 movie called Aniara, a Swedish film. It's science fiction, it's set in outer space, and you should really see it. The setup's pretty simple. The world's being destroyed by climate change and war, and so people are being shifted to Mars. There's a space elevator that goes up to a large spaceship called Aniara, which in 3 weeks shuttles people to Mars and then comes back and gets more people. So Aniara's on a pretty routine voyage. There's lots of facilities on there. It's kind of like a cross between a cruise ship and a shopping mall in a sense, and it looks like it was filmed partly on a cruise ship and a shopping mall. And the ship itself looks like a large shopping mall. If you have a look at it floating through space, it's got the look of a shopping mall where they just kept adding things to it as the size of the shopping mall needed to increase. Now, the protagonist in this movie is someone whose name is her job. She's called the Mimarobe, and she looks after a kind of virtual reality AI system called the Mima, which lets people remember nice things from their past on Earth, so walking through forests and going swimming in the ocean and things like that. The AI basically reads their minds, and it gives them good memory. So it's a way of chilling out on this kind of rather sterile voyage to Mars. Now, the Aniara has to dodge around some space debris, but doesn't quite make it. And a piece of space debris hits the reactor core for the propulsion system, and they have to eject the propulsion system of the spaceship. So the spaceship is off course. It's not going to Mars, and the thousands of people on board have to deal with that. The Mimarobe is attracted to one of the pilots of the ship, a woman called Isabel, and they kind of have a flirtatious relationship, which over the voyage continues in some really interesting ways. So at first the passengers are really pissed off, and the captain's got to calm them down. He tells them they're going to be using a slingshot effect around one of the planets in the solar system and coming back to Mars, and everything will be okay in about 2 years. This is only a 3-week trip. So they have to kind of rearrange things. They have to get things organised. And the movie then takes us through various time periods after the accident that causes Aniara to be veering off course. And as time goes on, we discover that there's no going back from this. The ship is by itself. It has algae tanks which will enable it to have food. It has artificial gravity. It has enough energy to power the systems of the ship, but they're heading out into interstellar space eventually. And we do see them go through the heliopause, and we get various little vignettes of the time jumps. There's a time jump a few months ahead, there's a time jump a year ahead, there's a time jump a few years ahead, all up until about 24 years after the accident. Now, I'm not going to do any spoilers on this movie. You have to go into it cold, apart from that précis that I gave you. But this one is hardcore. This is at times a horror movie, this is at times a tragedy, at times it's really hard science fiction. And unlike anything else I've seen, apart from maybe the TV series The Expanse, this movie gives you a really good sense of how big space is as the Aniara travels out of the solar system. The time jumps reflect changes in the ship and changes in the relationship that the Mimarobe has with Isabel, with the captain, with the crew, and with an older woman she used to share a room with, a woman who was an astronomer and who kind of is a reality check for the stuff the captain is laying down to keep the ship from going into total anarchy. And the movie shifts from time period to time period, gives us important events, and shows us the journey of the Aniara. It's a really good science fiction movie. I'm not going to even qualify that. It does the science right, giving the one impossible thing in there, which would be the artificial gravity. It does things well. It's a solid piece of fiction. As I said, it does look like it's filmed on in shopping malls and on cruise ships and things like that. There are some sets, and also in some industrial plants. So it does have a little bit of an Alphaville feel, but not going as totally off the grid as Alphaville did. And the environments are kind of familiar to us, but have a certain strangeness about them. And as time goes on, various religious cults develop in the ship. Various events occur to change the way people see things and the way people's hopes are raised on a rescue. And it really is uncompromising. And it's a hard watch at times. It's hard to watch as a horror movie at times. But I like the honesty of what it does. I like the characters involved. I like the fact that it gives us a sense of, if this movie was taking place in a future of the real world, this is what would happen. It is really, really good. Now, the main protagonist in this one, as I said, is the Mimarobe, played by a woman called Emily Garbers. And she is really good. The woman playing Isagel, Bianca Cruzeiro, is really good as well. And the captain, played by Arvin Kananian, goes through some interesting changes on the course of the voyage. Now, this one isn't for the faint of heart. Watching it while you're in lockdown during a pandemic was perhaps a little harder than it would have been under other circumstances. But it's a high recommend from me. I think somebody recommended it to me on the comments on a previous video. I don't recall who, and I apologize for that, but thank you very much for that. I like science fiction movies that really commit to the science of the matter and commit to showing it without the soft pillows of Hollywood encompassing the whole project. One of the other things I like about Aniara is the fact that it's based on a novel-length poem. It's an epic poem. It's not just 3 lines of limericks. It is a full-length, book-length poem. And for somebody to write something like that, for a start, it's a hell of a task. And to write one in 1956 that can be adapted in 2018 to a film like this is something to be admired. It was done in Swedish, and there have been English translations which are available out there. But, yeah, poems aren't usually where we get our source material for science fiction from. But maybe they should be. But, yeah, one of the other things that happened recently on the channel, in the comments, is somebody said that movies were basically escapism. And for a certain kind of movie, that's true. Movies are escapism for certain people in certain circumstances, and who are kind of conditioned to seeing movies only through that particular window. But they're also dramas, they're also tragedies. They're not just there to kind of tickle your funny bone and to make you giggle and to keep you amused. I think cinema is also a good way of looking at the human condition, amongst other things. And I think that this is one of those movies that really demonstrates that. If you want to see cinema as only escapism, absolutely go for it. Nobody's going to stop you. I'm not going to argue the point. I think, though, that there are movies that have other purposes in our society. And Aniara is definitely one of those. It's one of the best science fiction movies as a science fiction movie, if you know what I mean, with the science and things like that I've seen in a while. And it shows that we really should be watching more movies from other cultures, particularly genre films. I mean, I've talked about the Russian ones previously. I've talked about a few other cultures, science fiction and fantasy and horror outputs. But really embracing that and leaning into the subtitles and reading the subtitles and seeing that different cultures are going to show various science fiction tropes in very different ways and from their own cultural viewpoints is something I like. It's like having a tasting plate from a cuisine you've never tried before. It really does give us a number of things. It gives us something to think about. It gives us a different way at looking at the world. It gives us a different way of looking at science fiction. It gives me, at least, an incredible admiration for filmmakers that are willing to do the hard things and are willing to go places that other films in the genre don't go. Now and then, while I'm watching movies, I'll see movies like this that go, okay, yeah, that's what cinema is. There's, most of the time, kind of a little bit like I do in real life. I eat a lot of junk food. I watch a lot of junk food movies. I watch movies that are just there for that entertainment value. But really getting one that doesn't pull its punches, it really does do things the hard way, is refreshing. It cleanses the palate in a sense. And it reminds me that I should be watching more quality cinema and perhaps a little bit less popular cinema. It's a lesson that all of us should learn. I think that there are times when you want to watch a fluffy musical, and there are times when you want to watch cabaret. There are times when you want to watch Plan 9 from Outer Space, and there are times when you want to watch something a little harder as far as alien invasions are concerned. Cinema is a whole bunch of different things, and maybe I should dedicate next year, and I've said this before but I never actually did it, maybe I should dedicate next year to seeing a lot of foreign language cinema, particularly in the genres that I like. I'll come out of it a better cinephile, I'll come out of it more knowledgeable, and I'll come out of it more satisfied. I think that eating the same thing all the time and knowing the plot beats of every piece of Hollywood cinema and every alien invasion movie that comes out on Netflix, I think is kind of making me lose my sense of taste. But again, just to get back to the original subject, Aniara is a movie that I recommend. It's out there. I don't know if it's on streaming services where you are, but you should be able to definitely pick it up on disc, which I'm going to do. The version I've got is one that I picked up on the internet, but I definitely want to get a hard copy of this one. It's a good science fiction movie. Now, the other thing I was going to do this time around is some shout outs to some movie related YouTube channels that I think you should check out. Okay, so recommendations for other channels you should watch. First one's a really interesting one about Asian cinema, which I like a lot. It's a channel called Accented Cinema. And the guy who makes it is a Canadian born in China but who lives in Canada now, called Yang Zhang. And he has an incredible knowledge of Asian cinema from the viewpoint of a Chinese person living in Canada. He's a film student and has studied film, and if you want to know anything at all about Asian cinema and the stuff you should watch, how you should view it, and how it's seen from a cultural viewpoint, Accented Cinema is a channel you should watch. There's so many great things in there. There's a new thing about Shang-Chi. There's something about Tony Leung. There's some stuff about Bruce Lee and his films, Jackie Chan. There's things about Hong Kong cinema. There are things about the reasons why certain kinds of cinema work in mainland China and others don't. You can learn so much from that channel. It's really a high recommendation from me. The next one's a little bit lighter. It's Hanging with Dr. Z, which is basically Dr. Zaius from Planet of the Apes doing a talk show in 21st century California. It's done on a very low budget, but the makeup effects are really great. I'm not going to let you know too much about that, apart from the fact that it is full of 20th century cultural references to Hollywood and television culture, and is incredibly hilarious. So if you ever wanted to see a talk show with Dr. Zaius from Planet of the Apes, Hanging with Dr. Z is definitely one to watch. Another one is Just the Discs, which is done by my good friend Brian over in California, who is a Blu-ray fanatic and who likes kind of late 20th century and earlier stuff as well in popular Hollywood culture. He's incredibly knowledgeable. He does a podcast as well where he's had guys like, Quentin Tarantino on it. and just the discs really works well. It's just basically Brian pulling his new Blu-rays out of a box and talking about them. He's a really nice guy. He's really knowledgeable, and I have bought way too many things based on watching his channel. Also got to do a shout out to Sally, my wife, whose craft channel, Middle-Aged Geek Grrrl, is up and running. And if you or anybody in your family is into crafts, and particularly crafts where swear words are incorporated into the crafts, Middle-Aged Geek Grrrl is definitely a channel you should check out. Apart from the fact that Sal's really cute and she's increasingly knowledgeable, she will get craft kits and review them meticulously and honestly. And that's becoming part of her brand, is for her to review craft kits as she gets them. So if anybody you know is into that, you might want to steer them in that direction. By the way, all of these channels will be linked in the show notes this time around. The other ones I want to do, there are two more. The first one is Anthony A. Perez, who has been incredibly supportive of other YouTubers. I've done a couple of collabs with him. He's in Florida. He's a big Star Wars fan, but don't let that stop you. He really is passionate about films. He likes horror movies. He likes science fiction movies. He's increasingly reviewing some more serious cinema as well. And he really does know his stuff. So if you want to check out Anthony's channel, there'll be a link in the description. And he is incredibly supportive of other YouTube movie channels, and so I thought it was about time somebody gave him a shout out as well. The last one is somebody here in Melbourne. Tengy Talks TV and Movies, and Tengy is a very knowledgeable woman about cinema. She did a degree in cinema, which I did not do, and she does two things on her channel. The first one is she's going through all the series of the TV show The Goodies. She really likes The Goodies, so she's doing an analysis of every individual episode of that series. And she's also doing reaction videos to first-time watches of public domain films. Her first-time watch of Night of the Living Dead, she did that. She also did the 1910 Frankenstein. She did a werewolf movie from the late 1920s, and a whole bunch of other films as well. She really is knowledgeable about her stuff, and she does bring a really interesting and really nice feminist sensibility to it. And she'll call out sexism in the movies in a kind of amusing but very firm way. And I really like watching her channel. I don't know what she's going to be doing next, but I really think that people should give Tengy a bit of support there. So that's it for this time around. Thank you very much for watching. Wednesday I've got some plans for the next one, and maybe next Saturday I'll do a live stream where I will talk about, well, I've got some ideas for that. You might want to check the communication tab on the channel too, because I do some updates on there. If I see something that's going really cheaply on Amazon, I'll post a link to that as well. And I'll also kind of just do my thoughts on what's happening in movies and current kind of cinema news on that tab in the channel, so you can interact through that and interact with other people who've got similar interests to you. So thank you very much for watching. If you like the channel and like the video, please hit the like button, consider subscribing, and hit the notification bell. You can also support the channel by going to patreon.com/paleocinema and becoming a patron of the channel. And as always, look after yourselves, stay safe, watch some great movies, watch some bad movies, step outside your comfort zone and watch some foreign language science fiction films. And I'll catch you next time.